those that are on the West Coast of the United States very early. Thank you all of you for joining us for our webinar today as part of our monthly webinar series to inform our Lasallian network about the work of the Solidarity and Development Secretariat. Today's presentation will focus on emergency and humanitarian campaigns. And we're really pleased to welcome with us the Scalabrini Network, another religious congregation that will share with us some of the best practices that they've found when implementing emergency and humanitarian crises as well. So another opportunity for us to learn from other practitioners in the field that might help influence some of the work in our ministries as well. So we'd like to thank them for joining us for this webinar. So just one last reminder, please keep those microphones muted as we move through the presentation. And we'd like to start with a little Mentimeter poll to get a baseline of where we're at today regarding humanitarian emergency relief. Rosie?
Great, thank you, Peter. So if you can all click on the link that I've posted in the chat, you then should be able to answer this poll. And the question is, what has been your level of involvement in different humanitarian or emergency relief campaigns? So is that none, a little, moderate, or a lot? And so this is just helpful for us to know where you're starting from today. And we can already see the votes are coming through. So what has been your level of involvement in different humanitarian emergency relief campaigns? So it's nice to see that over half of you have a moderate level of involvement. Fantastic. And even almost a third of you have quite a lot of experience. So hopefully you'll find everything today a refresh, but hopefully you'll learn something new. But also some of you are very new to this as well. So hopefully you'll find that very interesting. Okay, back to you, Peter. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Rosie. And so we have a really diverse group of people with us today. Some of us have a lot of experience and some of us might be learning about emergency and humanitarian relief campaigns today for the first time, which is great. And so our first speaker to share with us some of the work that the De La Salle congregation is doing for emergency and humanitarian relief is Brother Craig Franz. Brother Craig is the executive director of LaSalle International Foundation in Washington, D.C., which is a fundraising arm for the Institute for North America. Brother Craig worked in Rome as the director of SECLI for 6 years, and through his present position, continues to collaborate closely with the Secretariat on international Lasallian initiatives. Because of that close and productive relationship between LaSalle International and the Solidarity Secretariat in Rome, it was natural that they would team to administer the global Lasallian COVID-19 response. And we welcome Brother Craig as he discusses that topic with us today. Brother Craig, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Peter. It's really good to be with everyone today. I appreciate it. I'd like to share my screen if I might, and then we can begin with the presentation. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how Lasallians responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. Since first identified in Wuhan, China in December of 2019, the COVID virus has caused 5 million deaths and infected more than 250 million people. All of us know the terrible challenges and the pain and economic uncertainty of COVID-19, but at the beginning, we really didn't know much at all about the virus. Public health officials suggested protocols to control the disease, but strict guideline adherence would be especially challenging in fragile, developing areas of the world. Because many brothers and partners operate schools in these locations, we knew that Lasallians would be particularly targeted by COVID. And so the Solidarity and Development Secretariat launched its emergency protocol for humanitarian assistance to the Institute's fragile sectors. If developed countries with strong medical, public health, and financial infrastructures struggled with COVID-19, the less fortunate developing areas of the world could be completely overwhelmed. It was quickly recognized this COVID pandemic would require coordination, resources, and an organization far beyond anything we had done previously. So a multi-phased approach was used. First, the Secretariat realized the best responses would need to be locally managed. Distributing soap, disinfectant, masks, and other public health items to hundreds of Lasallian locations would be overwhelming. The campaign, therefore, would need to provide funding so these items could be purchased locally. And so the COVID campaign decided to focus on fundraising so local needs could be addressed in local ways. The campaign smartly centered on fundraising for local solutions rather than trying to impose global standards for everyone regarding the management, procurement, and distribution of health-related materials. In order to be successful on a global scale, we had to enlist everyone's support. But this campaign would have to be different from our usual humanitarian campaigns. Typically, Lasallian schools play a pivotal role in fundraising, but they, along with 95% of all the other schools in the world, were closed. So, was there a new model we could employ which would utilize current structures without overly depending on schools to lead the humanitarian response? Yes. We thought it could be done by utilizing other existing associations within the Lasallian network. And so Zoom meetings were held with other Lasallian NGOs. We engaged their capacity to bring energy to the campaign. And because we are a diverse institute, those meetings needed to be held in French, Spanish, and English, with plenty of time for discussion. The NGO response was enormously encouraging. Everyone wanted to do whatever was possible to help. But we didn't stop there. We knew that the Lasallian network contains many components, so we enlisted the help of Lasallian alumni, UMAL, International Association of Lasallian Universities, IALU, the Young Lasallians, groups of visitors, and other people within our network. We had sensitizing sessions which explained the COVID need and then brainstormed on possible responses. Everyone wanted to assist, but not everyone could contribute financially. And so some people assisted by donating food. Schools pivoted classrooms into dormitories for healthcare workers so they would not need to travel long distances or possibly contaminate their families. Students around the world created Lasallian messages of hope and support for other students, encouraging them to stay isolated, wear masks, and follow public health recommendations. Advertisements were made by the communications office at Solidarity and Development in 9 different languages to solicit support for the campaign. A publicly available electronic toolbox of campaign materials was developed by Laura Ballerini, head of Secretariat's communications, which enabled people to reach out to other Lasallians on Facebook and Twitter and other forms of social media. This generated more than 850,000 contacts in support of our humanitarian campaign. Because communications were so vital, Every few weeks, the various groups would reassemble on video conference to see what other avenues needed to be explored, what approaches were working better than others, and how we could assist each other, as well as what were the areas of greatest need. These unifying moments, which brought together resources in new and productive ways, were held across 18 different time zones and involved hundreds of different people. All efforts were centralized at the Solidarity and Development Secretariat, which served not only to receive funds, but also to allocate those funds to necessary areas. In determining the total response to COVID, we were fortunate to receive generous support from large foundations and corporations. These included Misión Cara, Manos Unidas, Caritas, the NPO Lasallian Scholarship Fund, and grants from other dedicated organizations. We are grateful for their enormous assistance. One of the most urgent funding needs was not for personal protective equipment, nor for medicines, but rather for food. In developing countries, lockdowns pushed families with little financial savings over the edge. Many families experienced malnutrition. And so the emergency relief campaign would have to include funding food for Lasallians, as well as families of staff and students. In the end, the emergency COVID relief campaign was the largest humanitarian relief appeal the Solidarity Secretariat had ever launched. From February to June 2020, the initiative was able to successfully fund 226 Lasallian initiatives, which included school support, humanitarian aid, purchase of PPEs, hygienic supplies, food purchases, and other COVID-related needs for fragile groups. The campaign's assistance reached minimally 70,000 beneficiaries as more than $11 million in US aid was distributed. So, what were the organizational lessons learned through the COVID-19 response? First of all, we learned that the campaign's success depends on the response vitality of its members. This COVID-19 appeal was successful only because of the individual contributions by its expansive network. The contribution of each individual, each school, each NGO, and each district significantly impacted the campaign's success. We will talk more about this later, but the take-home message is that your support enabled us to be successful. To every person who donated time or energy or talent or communications or ideas or finances, we say thank you. We couldn't have been as successful without you. Secondly, we learned that communication is essential. With so many different moving parts responding to COVID, it was necessary to have frequent meetings of stakeholders. Regular, linguistically capacitated, informationally rich, and strategically thoughtful meetings enabled humanitarian responders to assess the project's trajectory and their role in achieving success. Thirdly, we learned to stay in your lane. With many different NGOs, public health groups, governmental assistance, and caring individuals responding to emergencies at the same time, it's easy to jam or even derail necessary relief. This decreases rather than enhances humanitarian assistance. So each group needs to do what it does well. We needed to focus on fundraising, and we stayed in our lane. Fourthly, rely on trusted partners. Foundations with established Lasallian partnerships responded generously and quickly by providing funding to trusted partners without the typical restrictions, reporting requirements, and multi-stage application process. Because trust is built up over time, it's good to maintain strong working relationships with donors for moments just like these. Fifthly, we found that sharing vulnerabilities offers collaborative strength. In forming a COVID response, the Secretariat felt that young Lasallians would be vital to the campaign. To be honest, we didn't really know exactly how they could help, but we knew they had to be part of the solution. After gathering the group together, explaining the situation, and asking for their assistance, we were amazed. They offered creative brainstorming, heightened social media penetration, unique fundraising approaches, and a positive energy that invigorated the campaign. Young Lasallians enabled the campaign's success. Sixthly, we needed to manage expectations. When initially mobilizing the campaign, the Secretariat indicated it would not be addressing the long-term issues and suggested it also might not be able to address intermediate issues. By doing so, it helped to manage the expectation of beneficiaries, concentrating on immediate humanitarian emergency needs. As it turns out, donor fatigue required that we couldn't advance beyond the first phase. And fortunately, by managing expectations up front, beneficiaries were understanding of the campaign's limitations for funding support. Future emergency relief efforts will be more frequent. A report in the preeminent journal Science a few weeks ago tells the story. If the planet continues to warm on its current trajectory, the average 6-year-old will live through roughly 3 times as many climate disasters as their grandparents. Many of you watching this presentation will experience more wildfires, cyclones, river floods, crop failures, and droughts than I have seen in my lifetime. An October 2021 U.S. National Intelligence Estimate report indicated climate issues will continue to plague susceptible areas. It identified 11 countries most likely to be impacted by extreme climate events. Lasallian operations are in 8 of those 11 highly vulnerable countries. Fortunately, the spirit of solidarity engendered through the COVID campaign and the deep core of caring for the less fortunate among us indicates a willingness and a history of coming to the aid of others. The next emergency campaign, and there certainly will be one, can draw from the success of the COVID-19 appeal. It will take the collective energy of everyone to address those needs and respond generously. Thank you for coming together to care for each other yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Brother Craig. That was so interesting, particularly having your lessons learned there. I think they'll be very helpful for everyone. Even myself, I think I've learned a lot from listening to that. So we're now going to give an opportunity for people to respond to what they've heard and to get engaged. So I'm going to put another link in the chat to the Mentimeter. And we want you to write in a word or a sentence what inspired you about the campaign that Brother Craig just shared, or what provoked a thought in your mind, or an interesting part of the presentation that you want to share with the others. So if you're able to write a sentence or a word about what inspired you about that campaign, and we'll see the answers coming through on the screen. So someone felt that, through collaboration, we can be stronger together, and sharing, the commitment of volunteers, definitely that came across very strongly. And yeah, lots of people working together. The power of youth, the young Lasallians were clearly very important. Generosity and trust. Yes, it was that's key. I'm afraid my Spanish isn't so good. Apologies, but great to see them coming through. A faster response, definitely. Better connection and collaboration. Yes, it was interesting how, although the pandemic might have kept many of us apart, in many ways it also brought us together, which was very special. Networking. Great. So I think the clear messages here are, together we are stronger and united, and the power of collaboration is very important. So I'll pass back now to Peter, who's going to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rosie. And thanks again, Brother Craig, for the very, very informative presentation. Our next speaker is Keaton Palatino. And Keaton Palatino serves as the International Coordinator for Young Lasallians in Rome. In this capacity, Keaton brings together the global talents and energies of young Lasallians as they advance the Lasallian mission. Keaton was also involved in responding to Typhoon Haiyan, known in the Philippines as Super Typhoon Yolanda, one of the most powerful tropical cyclones ever recorded. We look forward to hearing from Keaton as he shares with us the Lasallian response to this humanitarian emergency. Keaton, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the Solidarity and Development Secretariat for the invitation to be part of this webinar. So, good day to everyone. My name is Keaton Palatino, and I send you my greetings from the Casa Generalice Lasal here in Rome, Italy. I am originally from the Philippines, but in the past 5 years, I have been working in Rome as the International Coordinator of Young Lasallians. Today, I hope to be engaged in a fruitful discussion and share a little story about the project we initiated in the Philippines back in 2013 when Typhoon Haiyan hit the country. This is all in line with the topic of today's webinar regarding emergency humanitarian aid and response. What we have heard earlier from Brother Craig is the campaign of the Global Lasallian Network launched last year that provided assistance to those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps some of you are also aware of another campaign, LaSalle for Beirut, from last year. These are some of the more recent Lasallian responses to emergencies. And what I'm about to share with you today is regarding a crisis that literally hit home when Super Typhoon Yolanda, or internationally known as Typhoon Haiyan, stormed the Philippines and affected millions of families, which took the lives of thousands of people. To provide context, an average of 20 typhoons hit the country every year. And just last year, there were 22 recorded typhoons, each with varying strengths. However, among the more than 200 typhoons that have affected the country in the past decade, Super Typhoon Yolanda was one of the strongest and most destructive natural disasters the Philippines had to face. According to the data of the Department of Health in the Philippines, after the super typhoon left the area of responsibility, they were able to record that it has affected 2,146,341 families, almost 12,000 barangays, or what we call villages, 44 provinces, and led to 5.8 billion pesos, Philippine pesos worth of damages. These are data and numbers, but the realities of the communities affected are much more complex than what the numbers show. Meanwhile, De La Salle Philippines, as a network of educational institutions, who is known to be at the forefront of disaster response, initiated immediately and called for volunteers from different LaSalle schools in the country with the help of the respective social action offices in coordination with the Lasallian Justice and Peace Commission, the office in the Philippines in charge of disaster management. They launched a fundraising campaign to help affected communities. The immediate action was done through relief operations. Food, medicine, clean water, and sanitary products, etc., were sent to different evacuation centers and parishes. The efforts to help those affected by the typhoon did not stop in the relief operations phase. Due to the influx of donations, both locally and internationally, we were able to expand the efforts to help communities in the rehabilitation phase. The LaSalle Philippines was able to gather a total of 31 million Philippine pesos, or approximately 620,000 US dollars, and different initiatives were planned under the One LaSalle Yolanda Rehabilitation and Recovery Project. The entry point for the projects with the partner communities was centered on education, guided by the following principles: commitment on serving the poor, creating a better way of life, recognizing and strengthening the local stakeholder by involving the community in a participatory process, and lastly, the belief in private and public partnership. LaSalle focused on ensuring that the children and youth in the community will be able to continue their education despite the challenging circumstances they had to face. With this in mind, a big portion of the donations went to rehabilitation of 4 damaged classrooms and the construction of 11 new classrooms for 3 schools. These are for Mercyville Elementary School in Diit, Leyte, for San Miguel Elementary School in Dulag, Leyte, and for the Trinidad Elementary School in Tubabao Island, Eastern Samar. However, classrooms were not the only concern. Rebuilding and rehabilitating communities require more than reconstruction of physical edifices such as classrooms. The One LaSalle Yolanda Rehabilitation and Recovery Project provided interventions and programs for livelihood, youth formation and organization, health and wellness in a holistic sense, including mental health awareness, good governance, disaster risk reduction and management, and environment and waste management. We believe that collaboration and careful consideration of the above-mentioned areas will provide a more holistic response. Collaboration was evident the whole process of implementing the project, and we sought partnership with the local church, different organizations, and government departments to ensure that the program will benefit the communities. Allow me to share with you some of the specific projects that were implemented from 2013 onwards. These fall under the areas of education, livelihood, health and wellness, youth formation, good governance, disaster risk reduction management, and environment and waste management. On education, with the goal of providing disaster-resilient infrastructures, the team made sure that the designed classrooms will be able to withstand winds of up to 300 kilometers per hour. For reference, an average typhoon has wind speeds of 150 kilometers per hour. Aside from the classrooms and distribution of educational materials, the program also initiated various capacity building and training activities for teachers that focus on subjects such as classroom management, assessment of the K-12 program, and other team building activities. On livelihood, the programs were centered on creating sustainable means wherein the communities can initiate business ventures and generate income. The particular component benefited 254 participants, and under it are programs such as cooking and baking lessons, basic construction or masonry, carpentry, and electricity training and seminars, and fish preservation techniques for the fish they catch in the community. In our earlier conversations with the community, the area on health and wellness was also emphasized. More than the physical effect or damages brought about by the typhoon, members of the community mentioned that trauma from the typhoon experience continued to affect them, especially the children. The concern was also echoed by the teachers who wanted to be capable of helping their students process their traumatic experiences. The main intervention in this area is the conduct of post-trauma stress counseling and debriefing programs. And additionally, the team also conducted art therapy sessions for children to help them explore ways to express how they feel, as well as the medical and dental missions. Another segment for this component are the seminars on parenting and nutrition for the parents. On youth formation and organizing, there was a significant number of out-of-school youth in the 3 villages that we were working with. The interventions in this area of youth formation provided opportunities for young people in the community to be involved in training and development activities. These programs gather the young people from the communities and allow them to dream together and plan concrete projects for the youth in their community to be part of. The goal was to also create a central youth group that will help monitor and implement the projects that they planned. In the area of good governance, it is important to have a structure that will facilitate and enable change and development within the community. In line with this, this component aimed to assist local leaders and other stakeholders to form or transform a kind of governance that is transparent, accountable, participatory, and empowering. It also came at an opportune time that the national elections then were fast approaching. We received requests from the village officials and leaders for training programs that are focused on promoting effective leadership. With this, our volunteers conducted workshops on how to make ordinances, public speaking, and good governance in general. The last component of the project was about disaster risk reduction and management. With the painful experience of Typhoon Yolanda, it pays to be preventive than reactive. The interventions under this area focus on disaster mitigation, change adaptation, and disaster preparedness. A team of experts from one of the volunteer Lasallian schools held a seminar for 30 village officials and leaders that allowed them to see clearly the steps they need to take in times of crisis and disaster. The end output of this component was for the villages to come up with their own disaster preparedness plan as required by the Philippine law. The team who spearheaded the response have conducted research to empirically define the impact of these projects. The long-term impact of the project on the community and the volunteers is clear. Aside from the disaster-resilient classrooms that the students use until now, and the several capacity-building seminars and trainings that were provided, one of the most important outcomes of the project is the formation of long-lasting relationships between these communities and the Lasallian family, or the Lasallian network. Surely, our partner communities are guaranteed of LaSalle support as they continue to work on becoming self-sustaining. Networking and collaboration among the LaSalle schools in the Philippines was also strengthened through this project. The One LaSalle Yolanda Rehabilitation and Recovery Project is a labor of service and love, and it is reliant on sharing of resources. In our experience during the past years, there were schools that were identified to lead the activities, but the project would not be successful without the support of each of the LaSalle schools, our alumni, and the generosity of the international Lasallian community, proving again that we are stronger and together by association. Our partnership with the communities is still ongoing. At the moment, 5 scholars were given the opportunity to receive a Lasallian education. These students will potentially be the first Lasallian medical technicians, radiologists, and lawyers in their communities. Despite stories of being stranded in an island or in the sea, or waiting for days or weeks to deliver relief goods, and the long months of planning and project implementation, the originally 2-week relief operations transformed into a 2-year rehabilitation and recovery project involving 3 communities, several schools, and more than 200 volunteers. The Yolanda Recovery Program is a testament to the commitment of Lasallians in serving the least, the last, and the lost. Before I end, allow me to share 2 Filipino words with you: karamay and malasakit. Karamay means companion through good times and the harder and the more challenging circumstances. And malasakit means compassion. May our time together in this webinar inspire us to always practice malasakit and be a karamay to our sisters and brothers in need. Thank you very much and for your time and for listening to this presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Keaton, sorry. That was really powerful, and we're all sending our thoughts and wishes to those that have been affected, and it's great to hear how you were able to support them. So like last time, we're going to get some engagement around that campaign that Keaton just presented. So again, if you would like to click on the link that I will post in the chat, and we would like you to again think about what inspired you about what Keaton spoke about. And again, you can write it in a word or a sentence. What inspired you about the Yolanda campaign? Great. The diversity of responses by Lasallians in the Philippines, taking action in a collaborative way, the practicality of the response, it's a good organization, the proximity with the people, yeah, that really came across. The capacity they had to pass from reaction to prevention, definitely. Incredible potential to respond immediately and to make a long-term impact. And it's interesting that we're spotting some similarities between, you know, the responses here and the responses from Craig's presentation, that, you know, being able to act fast and act together in a united way was really important to the success of the campaign. And again, it's that local response, local actions that are tailored to the local context that are really important. The passion, the diversity, and working as a family. It's lovely to hear the word family when it comes to problems like these. Okay, I'll now pass back to Peter, who will introduce the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie, and thank you again, Keaton, for the wonderful presentation. I'd like to now introduce our next speakers. A native of Costa Rica, Sharon Granados has been dedicated to protecting and defending the human rights of migrants, refugees, victims of human trafficking and migrant smuggling, seafarers, and forcibly displaced people from organized crime and climate change. As development associate, She currently manages the Development Office and Global Programs at the Scalabrini International Migration Network. Also with us is Emanuele Selleri, Director of Agenzia Scalabriniana per la Cooperazione allo Sviluppo, Europa, Africa. Together, they will be talking about how the Scalabrini Network responded to the COVID-19 crisis in its work with displaced people. Sharon and Emanuele will also be presenting in Spanish today as well. Sharon and Emanuele, thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here with you. Our presentation will be in Spanish. I'm about to switch. Un gusto compartir con ustedes el día de hoy. Bueno, vamos a compartir la pantalla. Bueno, el día de hoy les extiendo el saludo en nombre de la red Scalabrini. Y por las que expandimos nuestra misión todos los días. Gracias por estar acá, por estar interesados en un webinar en asociación con nuestros colegas de La Salle. Así que gracias por estar acá. Hoy vamos a compartir acerca de nuestra experiencia con una campaña global que hemos titulado el año pasado Apoyo Scalabriniano para la respuesta a COVID o Scalabrinian Support for COVID-19 Response. Esta campaña parte por múltiples necesidades que vimos que surgieron a partir de la crisis sanitaria de COVID, especialmente porque nuestras poblaciones meta, que son tan vulnerables, se vieron revictimizadas en el marco de esta crisis global que todos sufrimos los embates. Así que cuando pensamos en nuestras misiones en 32 países alrededor del mundo, con 250 entidades scalabrinianas, pensamos en una respuesta que pueda fortalecer los programas de estas entidades. ¿Y por qué queremos fortalecerla? Porque vimos supremamente revictimizada la figura de estas personas por las cuales nosotros trabajamos, que son las personas migrantes, refugiadas, desplazadas forzadas y personas en necesidad de protección internacional. Cuando pensamos esta campaña, la pensamos porque a pesar del COVID y el cierre de las fronteras, las personas que he mencionado, ¿no? Estos grupos que he mencionado, que huyen de la violencia, la persecución y la guerra, continúan buscando protección y apoyo para sobrevivir a la crisis y encontrar seguridad en medio de la pandemia. No paran, siguen avanzando en busca de esta protección. Después, porque los migrantes, los refugiados, los marinos, los pescadores, las personas solicitantes de asilo por las que trabajamos, se encuentran entre esos grupos más vulnerables en riesgo de contraer el COVID y además tienen limitado acceso a bienes y servicios esenciales. Los migrantes y sus familias se convierten en un blanco de revictimización de la exclusión social y económica que se agravó muchísimo más con el COVID-19. Ellos permanecen en un grupo minoritario que sigue siendo vulnerado y que con la pandemia fueron exacerbadas estas necesidades y estas limitaciones. Luego, porque los trabajadores migrantes o las personas trabajadoras migrantes esenciales y sus familias aumentaban su vulnerabilidad, ya que ellos normalmente están limitados a la atención médica, a las prestaciones a las prestaciones por desempleo, por ejemplo, y la protección de la vivienda. Muchas de las personas recibieron algunos alivios en distintos países. En Estados Unidos se recibieron alivios importantes. Los migrantes, trabajadores esenciales y sus familias en condición migratoria irregular, aún pagando impuestos, no reciben estas prestaciones por desempleo, pero continuaron siendo durante la pandemia los trabajadores esenciales que continuaban llevando y trayendo las comidas, al igual las comidas, los insumos, los bienes, ¿no? Mientras que el otro grupo son los pescadores y los marinos, que son los que mueven las mercancías para que todos continuáramos consumiendo durante la pandemia. Y finalmente, ¿por qué planteamos esta campaña? Porque el papel de las organizaciones sociales y basadas en la fe es fundamental para responder a la urgencia que plantea esta crisis global. El papel de organizaciones como Lasallian, como Scalabrini International, como muchas otras organizaciones que han sido mencionadas, que están aquí, que no se escuchan, que están en el campo, in the field, ahí, the grassroots organizations, los que están de basada en esta declaración, que fueron nuestras motivaciones principales, el objetivo de nuestra campaña se enfocó en dos áreas principales. La primera y fundamental para nosotros era crear conciencia social, sobre todo crear conciencia social de lo que estaba pasando con estas personas y después reforzar la oferta de servicios para atender la creciente demanda de la asistencia de emergencia en estas poblaciones más vulnerables en las misiones escalabrinianas. Como ya he mencionado, entonces la campaña iba dirigida precisamente a asistir a estos grupos más particulares que ya he mencionado, los migrantes, refugiados, desplazados forzados, entendidos como aquellos desplazados por los efectos del cambio climático, por desastres naturales, personas desplazadas forzadas por situaciones sociopolíticas, por crisis intrarregionales, personas que han sido desplazadas forzadas por la fuerza, por el crimen organizado transnacional, por ejemplo, y también los marineros, que son uno de los grupos más importantes que atendemos junto con los pescadores a través de nuestra red de Estela Maris. El otro enfoque era acompañar a los trabajadores esenciales y sus familias, proveer acompañamiento al tránsito seguro, porque la crisis también se convertía en una panacea para sostener la irregularidad de los procesos migratorios y sujetar la irregularidad, ¿no? También, y la presencia de entes criminales también para el tráfico ilícito de migrantes y otros crímenes. Y además nos enfocamos en el tema de la atención a la violencia doméstica y a las crisis políticas. ¿Por qué? Porque como todas las personas stay in home, ¿no? Quédate en casa, se generaba mucha violencia doméstica, y entonces ahí nosotros hicimos todo un trabajo de atención y acompañamiento también a muchas mujeres y familias que fueron víctimas de la violencia en el marco, ¿no? de quédate en casa también, ¿no? por la pandemia. Nuestra respuesta escalabriniana entonces fue desarrollada a través, digamos, es desarrollada en distintas regiones en donde tenemos presencia, y a través de esta campaña pues también fortalecimos nuestro trabajo en todas las misiones. Como pueden ver, estamos en 5 regiones particulares. La primera es México y Centroamérica, que comparten geográficamente esta región, y en donde suceden efectos similares también. La región que llamamos Estados Unidos, que sería el norte por acá de las Américas, ¿no? Suramérica también, la región donde nos enfocamos también en países como Brasil, Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela también, entre otros países, y donde ustedes conocen muy bien que justamente en este momento estamos en la crisis también del desplazamiento forzado de venezolanos, ¿no? Entonces, nosotros estábamos en medio de 2 crisis simultáneas, ¿no? Y lo que hemos llamado nosotros en nuestras discusiones también una crisis dentro de la otra, que era tener ya la crisis de venezolanos, del desplazamiento, de la acogida de estas familias venezolanas, de individuos, pero después se suma la crisis del COVID, que fue donde nosotros tuvimos que reinventarnos como equipos para poder dar respuesta a esta crisis dentro de otra. También tenemos la región de Asia, donde particularmente se atienden a poblaciones migrantes, pero especialmente a los trabajadores del mar, los seafarers o la gente de mar, que son los crew, los trabajadores, los marineros, ¿no? Los pescadores, la gente que moviliza todos los cargos, ¿no? Los barcos que llevan y traen las mercancías, y que son los que estuvieron durante la pandemia también abasteciendo a los otros países. Y en el caso de la región de Europa y África, donde hoy vamos a compartir con mi colega Manuel también una experiencia muy particular de una campaña paralela que se hizo también. Así que bueno, estas son las regiones en donde nosotros implementamos nuestra campaña. Y es importante para nosotros mencionar que nuestra campaña fue pensada e implementada en 2 áreas. La primera área fue para responder también, más bien para responder las necesidades inmediatas y de emergencia, es decir, responder lo que la crisis nos traía en lo inmediato, es decir, responder a las necesidades muy particulares: alojamiento, alimentación, acceso a la salud, asesoría legal, continuar con el fortalecimiento de capacidades de las personas, dar apoyo psicológico, apoyo pastoral, las visitas a los hospitales, visitas a los barcos, proveer comunicaciones a las personas para que entraran en contacto con sus familias, proveer también programas de entretenimiento, recreación, actividades culturales, porque en medio de la pandemia uno de los elementos clave era atender la salud mental de estas personas, que por un lado estaban isoladas en los albergues, a las personas que nosotros pudimos albergar de acuerdo a las restricciones que imponían las autoridades en los países, pero también aquellas personas que que se quedaron, que iban en tránsito y quedaron detenidas en estos países. Entonces fueron personas que necesitaron muchísima ayuda para la parte de apoyo psicológico. Y después nos enfocamos en los efectos post-COVID para el mediano y largo plazo, es particularmente en pensar qué íbamos a hacer en el mediano y largo plazo, la estabilidad financiera y creación de empleo, la seguridad alimentaria, el acceso a la salud y vivienda digna, el bienestar e inclusión laboral de los marineros y pescadores, la estabilidad programática operativa y la incidencia sociopolítica. Voy a avanzar por el tema del tiempo, pero quisiera compartir algunos recursos inmateriales. Nosotros generamos una imagen corporativa de la campaña, estuvimos distribuyéndola en redes sociales, en nuestra página, en nuestra website, y además nos unimos al Giving Tuesday, que es una fecha importante que se utiliza acá en los Estados Unidos para el Thanksgiving, ¿no? Para el Día de Acción de Gracias, y fue muy importante. En este caso fue una fecha especial para mayo 5, que fue una fecha del Giving Tuesday que se generó particularmente para apoyar las campañas a favor digamos, para las crisis de COVID. Generamos muchos materiales de difusión, materiales mostrando, y esos son algunos de los tips que recomendamos. Generar materiales en que se muestre, ¿no? La gente, cómo los colaboradores apoyan las misiones, cómo la gente se está viendo impactada. Es importante para los que contribuyen también mirar, ¿no? qué está pasando. El impacto, bueno, tuvimos más de 200,000 personas que recibieron asistencia de emergencia. Casi 50,000 personas fueron acogidas dentro de los albergues escalabrinianos. 18,000 familias recibieron alimentación y alojamiento externo de los albergues, y más de 500,000 canastas de alimentos fueron distribuidas directamente a las familias. 14.560 personas recibieron ayuda financiera distribuidas en área de hospedaje, transporte, servicios públicos, incluso la repatriación de restos de personas que habían fallecido. Más de 15.000 personas se beneficiaron del modelo escalabriniano de empleo, emprendimiento e innovación social, que es una de las áreas que nosotros mantuvimos el enfoque, porque además de la asistencia en emergencia y la respuesta de la emergencia, nos enfocamos en dar una respuesta mucho más amplia en términos de la integración efectiva de estas personas y la autogeneración de empleo, la certificación. Ya estoy con el tiempo, así que voy avanzando. Y las donaciones, sorry about that. También recibimos donaciones que fueron distribuidas en las misiones. ¿Cuáles tips? Bien rápido. Rosy, no me regañes con el tiempo. Planear con tiempo, involucrar al liderazgo, crear una imagen compartida, especialmente cuando tenemos distintas misiones trabajando al mismo tiempo, crear una imagen compartida. Lanzamiento en fechas emblemáticas, particularmente en fechas que son importantes dentro de nuestras misiones, el día de Scalabrini, el día del migrante, el día del refugiado, etc. Tener campañas paralelas, generar reportes y publicaciones sobre lo que hicimos, lo que estamos haciendo. Y el tip más importante, agradecer, digamos, gracias siempre a todos los colaboradores. Esta imagen que ven acá es sobre un reporte de la actuación escalabriniana en Sudamérica. Y bueno, para avanzar le paso la palabra a mi compañero Emanuel, que nos va a compartir una de esas buenas prácticas. Cuando les menciono aquí, lanzamiento, tener campañas paralelas, es porque en las distintas regiones funcionamos distinto también con nuestros colaboradores. Así que decidimos que cada región podía generar también campañas paralelas. Así que te paso la palabra, Emanuel.
Muchas gracias, Sharon, y encantado de escucharte. Podías seguir tú y yo escuchando con gusto, pero un placer estar aquí una vez más con ustedes, con la familia Lasalliana, y compartirle rápidamente lo que en Europa, como Red Scalabrini en Europa, África, quisimos un poquito implementar. Yo después le voy a nombrar algunos números y algunos datos que son siempre importantes, pero me gusta un poquito subrayar cómo hemos titulado, ¿no?, la campaña Una sola casa. Una sola casa para decir que al contrario de mucho tiempo atrás, donde los migrantes seguramente fueron los más afectados, porque siempre las personas más vulnerables son afectadas más de los demás. Pero en ese momento, al menos en Europa, nos hemos dado cuenta cómo el COVID, la pandemia, ha puesto todos casi al mismo nivel, en el sentido que todos se tuvieron que sentirse en su casa, quien tenía casa, claro, y tuvimos por primera vez también la suerte. Yo digo siempre que la migración, al menos en Europa, no era el peor problema de la historia, porque ha llegado un problema real, más grande, que afectaba más a la gente. Entonces quisimos implementar, claro, nuestro enfoque siempre son los migrantes, los refugiados, pero también la pandemia nos ha dado una herramienta más que ya estaban haciendo entre nosotros, que no podemos trabajar con migrantes y refugiados si no trabajamos también con la comunidad local, donde los migrantes y los refugiados llegan. Y entonces al final con esa campaña quisimos implementar actividades, claro, a los migrantes y refugiados, pero también a la nueva comunidad donde van a vivir los migrantes y refugiados. Y hemos encontrado entre las varias emergencias 4 niveles de emergencia. La primera, claro, la del tema alimentar. Hemos entregado un montón de canastas alimentarias y cosas así. Y el tema de la emergencia sanitaria, nosotros hemos decidido, como no es nuestra experiencia máxima el tema sanitario, pero hemos decidido implementar una actividad particular en el tema de apoyo psicológico, sobre todo a las mujeres, y lo hemos querido implementar en idioma. O sea, para las mujeres, el apoyo psicológico para mujeres latinoamericanas en idioma español y portugués, así con mujeres filipinas en tagalo, en inglés, con mujeres de Ucrania y de Rusia en su idioma. Eso también para darle un aporte más y sentirse un poquito más cerca, ¿no? Y no sentirse más aislado de lo que ya se siente. Y otra emergencia, el tema laboral. Claro, el tema laboral fue más complicado porque en ese momento se ha parado el mundo. Pero desde ahí hemos decidido implementar lo que es la capacitación y la formación para que una vez que se podía empezar otra vez, hemos podido reempezar capacitando mujeres y varones migrantes y refugiados para que en ese momento han podido reempezar con más fuerza y con más herramientas. En este hemos intentado pagar como becas en algunas empresas que todavía siguieron adelante también en tiempo de COVID. Y otra emergencia que muchas veces no se piensa, mas que tal vez para ustedes del mundo de la sal la tienen más clara, el tema educativo, ¿no? Nosotros tenemos varios jóvenes alrededor de nuestras actividades y nos hemos dado cuenta como en esa temporada de COVID el tema de no poderse encontrar y de no poderse relacionarse afectaba mucho. Imagínense los chicos y chicas migrantes de segunda generación que ya tenían, digamos, relaciones más pequeñas, digamos. En eso hemos intentado, antes online y como se pudo en presencia, de reactivar varias actividades de reencuentro, de relaciones, para poder dar el gusto todavía de lo que es la relación. Y aquí tenemos esta pantalla donde fue implementada. Como ven, hay varios lugares, desde Europa hacia África, y los lindos que hemos visto es que no solo fue, si vas a la pantalla antes, a la página antes, Sharon, perdón, y si eres tú que estás manejando como hemos visto, si ven, por decirle, en Bosnia, Herzegovina o en Siria, en Turquía, son lugares donde nosotros no estamos físicamente como misiones, pero estuvimos ahí con los jóvenes en misión para visitar la gente en esa ruta de los Balcanes, que para los migrantes en esa temporada es una de las rutas peores, y mantuvimos los contactos con ellos y hemos podido enviar plata, hemos podido enviar presencia a través de nuestros jóvenes voluntarios que con unas brigadas de jóvenes de voluntarios fueron a apoyar a los migrantes en esta temporada terrible. Y lo que veo yo, y termino con eso, aparte de lo entregar muchas cosas a nivel material, a nivel de apoyo, lo que nos ha dado a nosotros como escalabrinianos, al menos aquí en Europa y África, es lo que decía al inicio, en el sentido que nos ha dado un impulso más casi a modificar un poquito nuestro trabajo para el presente y el futuro, no solamente más con un enfoque de lo que son nuestra meta, que son migrantes y refugiados y todo lo que Sharon ha explicado antes, mas nos ha dado la respuesta que para poder integrar a esas personas en una sociedad que recibe, tenemos que trabajar sí o sí también con la comunidad local, que en ese tiempo de pandemia también fue afectada, y el riesgo es que como se empiece en ese momento a vivir en una manera, digamos, normal, la diferencia entre ricos y pobres, entre migrantes y locales se va a alargar. Entonces, en este sentido, nos ha alargado la visión a nosotros y, claro, la pandemia fue terrible, pero tal vez fue también una oportunidad. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Emanuel. Y sí, de acuerdo totalmente. Y el tema que menciona Emanuel, solamente para finalizar, es que como escalabrinianos tenemos una premisa, y la premisa es el respeto por el territorio, la territorialidad, y cómo nosotros damos gracias también a los territorios que acogen, no solo a los migrantes y a estas personas en condición de vulnerabilidad, sino que también acogen a nuestras misiones para poder servir a otros. Así que gracias.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharon and Emmanuel, for bringing that really important topic to our attention today. And thank you especially as well for, sharing your stories of the Scalabrinis and how other organizations are running humanitarian campaigns. It's really nice to have that contrast and compare with what others are doing. So like before, we're just going to have another piece of sharing about what you felt about that presentation, and then we'll be going into some groups. So again, if you're happy to click the link in the chat and enter a word or a sentence about what inspired you about that presentation from Sharon and Emmanuel. And relationships, unity, bold and courageous. Definitely, I think, working with migrants and refugees is so important, and they often get left behind. So it was so bold and courageous that you took care of them and responded to the diverse needs. Again, we've got the importance of the diversity of responses, helping in different ways, compassion, and serving vulnerability on top of other vulnerabilities. Yeah. And collaboration. So again, I think you can see similarities coming up like last time around, the compassion and the unity and the diversity of needs and responses that have come up. Okay, so now we're about to go into some breakout rooms to have some discussions on what you've heard today, and you'll be guided with the facilitator. So the questions we would hope that you might try and talk about are to share some local or international campaigns you've been involved with, to think about how we can collaborate to be more powerful in supporting campaigns. So clearly collaboration is a really important part. So thinking about how you could do that more. And maybe sharing some learnings of campaigns that have been successful or maybe haven't been successful, and what we can learn from that. So we'll have 3 breakout groups, one that is in English, one that is in French, and one that is in Spanish. And we will ask you to self-select the group depending on your language preference. And the facilitators that are here will, they will guide the conversation. And we should, we'll have about 15 minutes, I think, in these groups. So hopefully that will be long enough. But if not, I'm sure we can continue these conversations another time. And just to remind those of you that at the end of this webinar today, we'll be sharing some helpful tools and resources. So please do stay with us until the end, because I'm sure you'll want to have those. So let me just start to open the breakout groups. And if you're having troubles getting in, I can stay around to help you out. So there we go. Hopefully you can pick your language. Thank you. If you're not able to pick your language, please message me in the chat asking me which language you would like to be put in, and I can manually do it. Hopefully it's okay. Is there anyone that would like to be in a group but is struggling? If you want to write in the chat or ask me, I can help you. Jean, you would like to be in the French group? Okay. Sign to French. Brother Anton, do you want to be in the English group? I can put you in there.
Yes, English group.
English. I'll put you in now. Hopefully you'll get an invite. And Jean, hopefully you have an invite to the French group. Anyone else that would like to be in a group? Spanish. Yeah. If anyone in this room would like to be in a group, please let me know what group you'd like to be in and I can help you. C'est bon.
All right. Are we all back? Right. Well, welcome back, everyone. I know it was a little shorter than we wanted, but it was always nice to kind of talk and interact and learn from others about our different realities. I just wanted to ask for a very short reflection from each of the groups, maybe one thing that stood out in your conversations. And if we could start from the French group. I'm not sure who was selected to share back there.
Hi, Peter. And this is Angela from the French group. And to share just one thing that emerged, it was that the campaigns from the point of view of the communities that received the help. So the international solidarity fomented or fostered also a local solidarity. And this has changed really a mentality and a pattern. So this is what has been shared in one point and much more, but thanks.
Great, thank you. And in our Spanish speaking group with Sharon, Emanuele, and Craig, one item that kind of came up?
Quizás yo podría mencionar un elemento, fue la capacidad de transformación y de innovación que identificamos no solo en nuestros equipos, pero también en las poblaciones locales, que como decía nuestro compañero Dante, gente que creemos que no tiene mucho, tiene una capacidad de innovación impresionante para poder aportar a las campañas humanitarias. Y eso, nos quedamos con eso, con la capacidad de transformación, de adaptación, de resiliencia y para poder apoyar situaciones en crisis como estas.
Thank you, Sharon. And then from the English speaking group, I think just looking at the time, I'll just resume very quickly. We had a very good conversation. One thing to note is the kind of tightrope between wanting to support global initiatives, but also understanding that there are local needs too, and how to maintain that balance. And there might be some synergy with Angela and the French group about how the international campaign can be a catalyst for even more action locally. And one other thing could be to perhaps have kind of a statement at the kind of global Lasallian level to put humanitarian actions in the context of our educational mission, to understand why, as Lasallians, it's so important for us to incorporate this into our education and make this a part of what we do. Just to kind of frame that context would be really helpful moving forward. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar, and thank you to the Scalabrinis for joining us as well. And of course, we couldn't do this without our wonderful interpreters who make this all possible. So thank you to our interpreters. Before we leave, we promised a toolbox for all of you. And so I'd ask, Laura has beaten me to the punch. In the chat box, you'll find a link to a folder where you can access all the neat tools from the different campaigns that you heard about today, including the wonderful things from our colleagues with the Scalabrini Migration Network as well. So also, you'll be receiving a link to the feedback survey. I think, will we put that in the chat there? There we go. Please do go ahead and click on that. Provide us some feedback on the presentation today to help us inform our future webinars. And we ask you to please join us on December 1st for our upcoming webinar on our International Volunteer Network. Any other last minute items that I might have missed there? I'm seeing a shaking of heads now. Great. So thank you everyone for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to have all of you, and we look forward to seeing you on December 1st. Thanks again, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.